Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my next Avatar Weekly Discussion topic video. This one is going to be Book 2 Earth, Missed Opportunities, second last in my series of Missed Opportunity videos, only Book 3 Fire to go after this. But yeah, let's get into Book 2 Earth. Again, let's focus on the positives here, just as we start, then we'll get into some of the negatives. I think with Book 2, it's just such a solid and excellent book. There's not a ton of disappointing episodes or below average episodes. There's just a lot of interesting plot stuff that happens here. Some interesting characters introduced. The villain obviously kind of steps it up a big bit with Azula being the villain. And there's just a lot of very notable episodes. Zuko's kind of journey now that he's not hunting the Avatar as much anymore. The interaction of our kind of team as new characters kind of come in and out. A kind of better exploration of kind of the spirit world stuff as they kind of learn more and more about the Fire Nation, and the big bit in the middle with them finding out about the eclipse as like their one big chance to make a big strike against the Fire Nation. And just the build, of course, once you get the Ba Sing Se, and then this amazing political arc that just about Ba Sing Se that works exceptionally well, and is probably one of the more complex topics that we have kind of explored within the Avatar universe up to now, and that just builds on top of stuff until the finale, which is pretty amazing. So, I don't think there's a ton of bad things to really say about Book 2. It is, for most people, probably their favourite book because it really marked a kind of change within the series to being much more plot focused. I personally have it as my second favourite book of Avatar, just because I feel the amazing moments within Book 3 sort of outshine a lot of the amazing moments in Book 2, and that maybe Book 2 is probably the most consistent in terms of just sheer quality of episodes. Book 3 kind of has a couple of episodes that are just kind of good, but then I think it has a lot of really good episodes, whereas most of the Book 2 episodes are like very good, but perhaps doesn't have as many episodes that are like excellent, and doesn't really have many that are kind of good or below that. So that's kind of the general way I kind of view Book 2. It's just like super solid, but maybe missing a few more like really big moments. But let's get into some of the negatives, and I'll say straight away, I have a feeling this one might be one of the shorter ones within this series. There's really not a lot to complain about with Book 2. The main complaint to me would be the placement of episode 15 and 16 of Book 2. So that's the Tales of Ba Sing Se, which is followed by Appa's Lost Days. Episode 15 is the Tales of Ba Sing Se, 16 is Appa's Lost Days. And the reason I question the placement of these a little bit is, what is the episode directly before and after these two episodes? 14 is City of Walls and Secrets, 17 is Lake Laogai. Those two episodes together are probably like effectively make up two of the kind of best episodes within the book, in terms of like this, conspiracy within the walls arc with Long Feng, meeting the Earth King Kuei and stuff like that. The return of Jet and everything kind of beginning to come together towards the finale. It just feels a little weird. Like they give an explanation within the plot as to why like they can't act for a while, and that makes sense for like some kind of side episodes to happen. It's just the two of these happening right in the middle of arguably like your two key important plot episodes, to me isn't the best move to make. I think there was a way to have these episodes placed where it didn't necessarily come across like this, in that I could potentially, as just to fix this, kind of maybe just do 14, 15, Lake Laogai 16, then Appa's Lost Days, like Appa comes back and then you explain how he got to this point, then the Earth King, as you kind of begin to set up some stuff like that. That would make sense, because obviously the whole idea of like Suki being captured by Azula happens in 16, and then Azula arriving in the Earth Kingdom, kind of as the Kyoshi Warriors, happens to the next episode. I think that would have linked together a little bit better, but that's that. Like this is very similar to the complaint I have with Book 1, where you have Bottom of the Water Tribe and the Deserter kind of dealing with kind of very similar plots with Aang, both episodes that kind of make him look bad, having them both right next to each other. This is similar case. I still like both of these episodes, especially Appa's Lost Days is a very different episode, and I like the focus on like Appa as a character and how he gets to meet various other characters. But again, maybe you can sort of question they didn't need to devote an entire episode to that. I could have maybe seen a way where they could have potentially combined like the Tales of Ba Sing Se with Appa's Lost Days, where like maybe you just had like 2 or 3 small stories as part of the Tales of Ba Sing Se, and then like the second half of the episode is the tale of Appa, which effectively is the tale of Appa's Lost Days, and you just kind of shorten it, confine it a little bit, and maybe devote a little bit more time to the overall conspiracy within the Walls arc. But really, like, that's a fairly minor plot. That's just like little things to like perfect the format of book 2. That's like not a huge complaint really at all. So that's kind of one of the only like major things that kind of stands out to me that is even potentially an issue within book 2. And then it's just, I think, a matter of just reasons why maybe book 2 doesn't stand out as much with regards to like huge and big massive moments. I think it comes back to stuff like the drill. I've obviously talked about this as being one of my kind of bottom ranked episodes of Avatar. This could have been a huge episode to set up the Ba Sing Se arc going forward, because you effectively have a huge battle between the Fire Nation and the Earth Kingdom here, but it's so small because, as I said before, it's just a drill and a couple of tanks in mounting an attack against Ba Sing Se. The response from the Earth Kingdom is pretty bad. Team Avatar is left to basically do everything on their own, and that's really about it. You get some Jet and Zuko stuff in the background, which is good to set up what that plot will be going into the next episode, but the focus of the drill and another attack on Ba Sing Se that nearly succeeds just doesn't feel as big as it should be. And I can just imagine like how strong this episode would be if it felt more like a full-scale battle, that maybe it wasn't quite big enough to alert like the whole Earth Kingdom army, but that this episode is notable as a huge attack from the Fire Nation, that they really made a move here, and like even doing something like maybe the attack fails at the end and they just make some sort of a note about the fact that like it took like Iroh and his group 600 days to get as far as we did in the space of like an hour. And they just note like the technology is really giving us an advantage in the war. Maybe begin to foreshadow air power even at this point again, that like once we get that stuff made we'll have an even better chance. Just it could have been this like, amazing foreshadowing moment, but it just in the end kind of felt fairly small scale and kind of missed the mark for me a little bit. The other thing I'll add about this is it's not necessarily a negative. It's not a negative at all. But why, for me, this marks why there's such a huge improvement from book 2 over book 1. In that there are episodes that, just on the basis of like what they're about, would seem like that seems kind of like one of those random book 1 episodes that wasn't that great. This is like a kind of waterbending scroll episode, a Jet episode where they just arrive at a random place, something happens. But what makes these episodes better in book 2 than in book 1? For me, they add an extra importance to a lot of these episodes. So, the first episode, Avatar State, it's basically just them arriving at an Earth Kingdom outpost, starting their journey in the Earth Kingdom. But what makes it amazing and really strong is that it focuses on the Avatar State, which is set up as a plot point for basically the entirety of this season. It's not a hugely focused upon plot point in that it's really only addressed in a couple of episodes, but it's there. And they kind of bring it up here. We get more insight into what the Avatar State is, kind of retroactively explaining to us what this thing that we've seen a few times is actually about. Not to mention, I suppose, the start of, Zuko and Azula's kind of rivalry, and Zuko and Iroh kind of being on the run, and the start of their journey within the Earth Kingdom, kind of undercover, not as kind of Fire Nation kind of royalty anymore. So there's that. The Cave of Two Lovers, like straight off, like knowing that this is going to be potentially a kind of Katara Aang romance kind of episode. What's making this better than The Fortune Teller, which is a kind of similarly themed episode? in that, like, okay, you've got a bunch of random characters, Chong and the Nomads in this one, the fortune teller herself, and Meng in the fortune teller. They're very similar in some ways. What makes this episode better is that, like, you have that romance stuff growing closer together, you have the funny aspects, but you also have this important lore aspect as well to the episode, in that this is where we learn about the kind of origins of Omashu, the origins of Oma and Shu, the first humans to learn, the martial art behind earthbending from the Badger Moles, which is a foreshadowing to the fact that that's kind of exactly the way Toph learned how to earthbend, directly from the Badger Moles, and it's just a very interesting one that we get that here, while also, developing the relationship. This is the one where Iroh gets poisoned in the background. It's just the start of that journey, like, basically Zuko beginning to see the effects that the Fire Nation has had on the world, like, that at the same time as Aang and co are kind of searching for an earthbending teacher to learn quickly, Zuko is actually experiencing what the rest of the world feels about the Fire Nation by going undercover with people not knowing who he is, and how that changes him. That's a really cool, like, ongoing arc for book 2. And you have a few other episodes like that. The Swamp seems like a kind of a Great Divide type episode, just based off the whole idea of, like, it is a notable landmark within the world. The Great Divide is the biggest canyon. This is like this huge swamp. What makes them different? One, you're introduced to random tribes that don't really do a lot with. Here, you're just like, okay, here is like an important tribe, like the Foggy Swamp tribe, the kind of lost tribe of waterbenders. That's cool by itself. They introduce a kind of new style of waterbending. Then the really important kind of spirituality thing about the banyan tree and the idea that you can achieve enlightenment, and just where they go with that, the whole idea of everything being connected, and then the blue spirit coming back into play with Zuko. Avatar Day is another good example. They just come to a town that is having a day against the Avatar. That seems like a perfect book 1 plot. That it's just like, oh, they come here, some random stuff happens, they leave. Kind of like the setup for the deserter that they go during, like, the fire festival thing. But what makes the episode really good is that you get the reasoning behind why this village has an anti-Avatar Day. In that they were that's basically the village where Chin the Great Conqueror comes from. And Kyoshi was the one who killed him. And they joke about it, you have some fun stuff, like Aang in prison is really hilarious, and stuff like that. But the big notable moment here is that, after all these kind of hijinks, they have a trial, you actually get Kyoshi arriving on the scene and explaining what exactly happened. They show you the flashback, and you kind of get a better sense of who Kyoshi was, and kind of an idea of how one avatar handled the situation versus, I suppose, meant to contrast with how Aang handles these situations. And then obviously this is an episode where Zuko actually leaves Iroh in the background, so that's a very notable thing. But yeah, there's just a few of the early episodes that kind of highlight that it approached doing things a little bit differently. It was aware that you can't just have an episode that just is an episode, that they're in a town and they're doing something, that there has to be something notable with each place that you go to, and I think there is with most of the episodes here. As I said, the only real issues I would have with episodes are that I do feel the Tales of Ba Sing Se and Appa's Lost Days are just a little bit overly different and experimental to have right next to each other in the middle of your really important kind of set of episodes. And then for me, the only other episode I would in any way class as relatively weak would perhaps be The Chase, just because it gets a little bit frustrating in that okay, everyone's tired, everyone's irritable, they're being chased, and it kind of in the end leads to an amazing moment at the very end. Everyone I think remembers this episode for the big final Azula confrontation where kind of Zuko, Iroh, and everyone comes together, even Toph comes together, and Iroh's injured. Everyone remembers that, but I think prior to that, the build-up to it is a little kind of monotonous, kind of, but overall, solid stuff. But I think overall, there's not a lot of real criticism to be kind of leveled at the series overall here. It's really, really well done. I think the only thing is just that it's the thing with sometimes with a conspiracy plot is that it maybe doesn't feel as like amazing, like bombastic, like awesome as maybe some other plots where it's just like huge battles happening all over the place. And that kind of partly happened here in that a lot of the intensity around the finale is kind of which side will Zuko go on. It's Aang Avatar's state. It's a relatively small scale battle just because of the way they do things, and that like Azula infiltrates, gains control of the important factions within the walls, and then gains control that way. That there isn't really that huge big battle. But obviously they're saving that stuff for book 3, and I think that's the only thing you can sort of like maybe criticize book 2 for, in that, like the drill, you didn't really get the huge battle. The battle in the catacombs was really strong, of course, but we never got our like massive battle. That's the only thing for me. And I suppose going back to the Tales of Ba Sing Se more specifically itself, it is an episode that I think people tend to remember like only for the Tale of Iroh. Just that kind of, that specific part of the episode, and even more specifically the bit at the very end, celebrating the death of his son and the birthday of his dead son, Liu Tan, Leaves from the Vine, the song. I think everyone remembers that. I think some people remember, the tale of Sokka, just with how unique the kind of dialogue in that episode was, and also the tale of Zuko, just with the fact that it's Zuko going out on a date with Jin, and Jin is a pretty cool character that I think people really do like. It's just like oddly, probably the tale of Aang is probably the most forgettable one. The tale of Toph and Katara, while interesting, it's a good moment for the two of their relationship, but it's relatively forgettable for the most part. And then the tale of Momo sets up Appa's Lost Days. It's just, as I said, I almost would have preferred that they sort of found a way to link the Tales of Ba Sing Se and Appa's Lost Day together, maybe into one episode, but you can't have everything. So yeah, I'm really running out of points here, and I'm probably forgetting some sort of criticism I've leveled at book 2 before, but just off the top of my head, because it's not coming straight to mind, I don't really think there's anything too critical that I've left out here. I'm just looking through an episode list right now and seeing where they're going with this. I suppose the one thing I will say on this is, in terms of the introduction of Toph, really great character and how they introduce her. The Blind Bandit is definitely one of the best character-focused episodes of the series and has some great action in it. I just feel they never really, within the entire series for the most part, committed to giving her a character arc within the series. You obviously have her, struggling with joining the group initially. She's never really had too many friends, so of course, it's going to be a struggle for her to instantly join a group that's been together for so long. And you have things like her learning metal bending and so on, but in general, there's no arc with her. They never really refer back all that much to her leaving her parents and her going against their wishes to join the team. It's just little bits as she kind of gets used to the team, and part of that is that outside of 1 or 2 episodes within book 3, they also never really develop her all that much. I feel that if book 2 had maybe done something more with her parents, maybe before she left, or she found her way back to them and there was a moment there, or even if book 3 did something, I just feel there's some slight missed opportunities within book 2 that you could have set up a deeper kind of character arc there with Toph, and maybe some of the stuff that they touch on in the comics, like the rift and the promise, and how Toph feels that the way her parents treat her, could have been brought up a little bit more, because it very much feels like a forgotten plot point, the whole idea of Toph and her parents, outside of sending Halki, which in itself seems to be forgotten in book 3 when it happens. You don't really get a ton of information on where exactly things are going. But yeah, I think I'm going to end it there. In the comments, definitely let me know what your thoughts are. I do think in general most people really, really like book 2, and it's always seen as that solid book. I don't think I've really ever seen someone say that, oh no, book 2 is the worst book of Avatar. I've never seen that said about it. I've seen people say that they don't like book 3 as much. It's kind of different. I've seen people say obviously that book 1 is the worst, but I've never really seen book 2 placed that kind of at that level. It's either everyone's first or second favorite book, and I think that speaks to the overall solidity of it, and the fact that they didn't really have too many negatives, missed opportunities to bring up with it, kind of speaks to it too. Also, there are of course various little things that they could have done, maybe focused on a bit more, but as I said, super solid book, not a lot to complain about. So yeah, that's going to end the video for this week, and obviously next week I'll cover book 3 Fire, and we'll kind of bring the missed opportunities to an end, and then we'll get into my top 5 Avatar episodes and my top 5 Korra episodes lists to kind of finish off this batch of weekly discussion topic videos, and then we'll get into some more different ones after that. So yeah, I'll just finish by saying, if you want to follow me on social media, links to my Twitter and Tumblr are in the description below. If you want to support my channel, the links to my Patreon campaign and also my PayPal donation link are in the description below. But yeah, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.